All right, so let's start off with today's news. This morning, NBC fired Matt Lauer 24 hours after learning about some incident that we know about. Charlie Rose was fired in 24 hours. Fox News famously had a relatively long period, it seemed, with a lot of folks who were accused of similar things before they departed the company. Does this make you rethink that at all?
No, well, let me first of all say, with Matt Lauer, and I don't know anything more than what we've all seen, read, or watched the headlines this morning. And it's important, I think, for us all to take perspective from the outside looking in around any allegation or investigation that a company has, and certainly we've lived through this for the last year and a half, is that the fact set of these allegations, or whether there's been harassment or not, can be very different in very different cases, which the headlines don't always show. So a harassment case or claim against one person in one situation versus someone else might be completely different situations, and also might be much more difficult for a company to act on. Now, presumably here in NBC's case, they've had actionable information that they were able to move very quickly, and you've got to commend them for that. And it's a terrific sign to see the companies moving that quickly to eradicate, if that's ever possible, we hope it is, sexual harassment in the workplace. But with Fox News, for instance, it took us 13 days from the time we had the first, we learned of the first allegation against Roger Ailes until the time we sort of walked him out of the building. And so, I'm not sure when NBC first, we don't know when NBC first heard this allegation, but certainly I think 13 days by historical standards of removing a CEO of a business, I think is a pretty good track record.
And with Bill O'Reilly, it seemed that there was a private settlement that he was then allowed to continue. Have things changed around that?
No, so what happened for us is that, again, you have to look at the fact sets. And the fact sets around the Roger Ailes situation and the Bill O'Reilly situation appeared very different and still appear to be, well, still are factually different. With Roger Ailes, what we were able to do is go in, we hired an independent law firm, an outside law firm, to work for us, and not technically independent, but work for us to go in and investigate all the allegations, which included speaking to the women involved, corroborating their stories, getting firsthand corroboration from when the harassment was claimed to have happened. So a really very rigorous investigation where we were able to talk to our employees and gain the facts that we needed to act upon that, right, and to exit an executive. With Bill O'Reilly, that was very different in that there were private settlements that had happened in the past. The company had never had a complaint, and the private settlements precluded anyone from talking to us. So we had a complete inability to actually dig into the story and to find out what had actually happened. Once, however, these claims became public and we were aware of them, what we were able to do was change his contract and say that if there was any further allegations that arose, we could fire him for cause immediately, which is what we did.
And in Fox and more generally, is it now no longer okay that someone could have a private settlement where there are gag orders on the other side and still stay at work? I mean, is that the company's business?
Yes, that's what it should be. You should not have situations where, and look, what we do as well, and this is the disappointing thing, is that we have very strong HR departments. We now have we have a global head of HR, and so that the local HR departments don't, in these situations, don't talk to their local management. They should come straight up to the senior management, and ultimately, if the situation looks serious, to my brother or myself. And we also have hotlines throughout the company. We have a number of anonymous hotlines and for complaints or for people if they want to go on the record with us about a complaint. So these are important mechanisms that you need people to trust and to use so that we can then act on that. And if people don't use that, it's very hard for the information to filter up that we can take advantage of.
Let's talk about other recent news. I met an executive the other night who has worked with you and your family and the company for a long time.
Sorry, Henry, before. I think the fundamental thing, though, because we talk about the headlines and these are juicy media stories, it's so important, though. I think this has been a fantastic thing, and frankly, we should all see it as a very good year because it is completely unacceptable for men, and particularly, unfortunately, we're seeing powerful men, to have and allow or engage in harassment in the workplace. And the fact that we're going through this sort of cathartic moment, not just in media, but as we see throughout all of society and all sort of business and elsewhere, I think is a tremendous thing. And I think we come out of this as a community, far, far stronger.
Hear, hear. Other news recently, I saw a friend, an executive, former executive of the company. He said, I never, ever thought that the Murdochs would ever consider selling anything. And now here we're reading that you may sell half of your crown jewel, the company. What's changed?
Backstage, Henry and I were just talking about our children. We both have 13-year-olds. And my 13-year-old was telling me the other day how the one thing he was disappointed with going into middle school was the schoolyard gossip. And so a lot of our rumors and speculation can get out there that aren't necessarily true. And so my advice to him, my advice to myself is let's not feed that gossip and that speculation. And that's always been a long-standing policy of the company. So we're not going to talk about the stuff that's bubbling out there in the media and in sort of Hollywood hallways. But the reality is what this has caused, this speculation that we might ever sell a part of our business. This has caused a debate around scale in the media. And when I look at scale, we've been saying, and I've said on stages like this over the last couple of years, that absolutely there are subscale businesses in media today which will be the losers going forward in a digital world. And that's absolutely the case. If you haven't invested in your programming and your channels, you haven't invested in your sort of distribution platforms, you are unlikely to get on the new digital services, and you'll subscale. You'll really struggle. We don't believe we're in that situation, and we can demonstrably point to growing affiliate fee growth. I think we're maybe the only company in America that's growing, certainly large media companies that's growing subscribers, actually net subscribers across our channels because of our mix of younger cable channels. So we feel very well. I know we'll talk about it more in a few minutes, but we feel very strongly about where we're positioned to grow the company as a standalone company.
And yet, it is the job of analysts and others to evaluate schoolyard gossip, as you put it. And one of the very strong media analysts said about the reports that you might sell half of 21st Century Fox, this makes, quote, immense sense. So if we go the other way on that, if you don't sell them, the analyst would say, makes less sense. So can you shed some light on what he is seeing and to report? So the reports are that you're considering selling your stake in Sky, the satellite controls pay TV in Europe or UK rather, National Geographic, FX, the film and TV studio, your site of Hulu, keeping Fox Sports, Fox News, and Fox Broadcasting. Hypothetically, what would be the reasoning there? Like, why would that make immense sense?
So again, I'm not going to comment on the exact speculation, but what's happening? So you are, and the reason the analysts are saying there'll be consolidation in the industry, right? In the industry, is if you look at what's happening with the digital, so as the cable universe is declining, the traditional cable universe is declining in the United States at a pace which has slowed a little bit of around overall in traditional cable 2.5%. If that continues, obviously cable affiliate fees are one of the key drivers for the big American media companies. A little bit less for us because we have such a big international business, but still in our U.S. business, very important area of revenue. So what's happening though is the new digital MVPDs. So the YouTube TV, which is a tremendous service, the new Hulu Live service, which is the DMVPD service, not the video on demand service, but the television service, the live television service. These are beginning to grow tremendously, and it's very early days, but they're now significantly in the sort of mid hundreds of thousands of subscribers when you aggregate them. YouTube TV advertised for the first time in a significant way in the World Series, and did tremendously well, added a huge number of subscribers. And so it's very early days of this. Now, we see in that traditional, as the traditional cable business is declining, absolutely our subscriber growth the decline is being ameliorated by this digital growth. Now, here's the key though. You have to be on those digital MVPD packages. And those packages are only valuable to subscribers if they're cheaper than the current bloated cable bundle. And so to be in that core bundle, you need to have core channels that people want. And so our investment in Fox News, in FX, in National Geographic, in Fox Sports, which has been tremendous consolidation of our programming and marketing investment in those 5 core brands, has resulted in those brands being on every single one of the significant new digital MVPDs. You can't say that for other companies. You can't say for Viacom, right? You can't say for A&E. You can't say for Discovery. And they'll have to come up with a separate strategy. But for us, we're seeing our investment in these core brands really starting to pay off, and mean that we'll be winners in the new world going forward.
And you talked about YouTube TV and some of the other top solutions, which are really incredible when you get into.
And it's early days. Like we're at the first of the starting block of this new industry.
And are people within them watching television? Are they actually using it, or are they using it as a DVD player or a
So the services are all different, and this is the other, I think, really exciting thing, because they're marketing to different types of people. So, for instance, Sling is really marketing itself, or DirecTV Now, I think it's called, really marketing people that are cord cutters that are coming off of the traditional services, and they're trying to replicate a traditional, to spin down effectively a traditional MVPD customer. YouTube TV is an assortment of the core live channels, so the top 40 or 50 cable channels and local TV that you'd want to watch, right? So how to get the lowest price for the highest ratings, right? Highest interest. Hulu is a little bit different, because with Hulu TV or Hulu Live, you also get the SVOD service. So there's no video on demand service on YouTube TV. But bundled into and it's $5 more expensive, bundled into the Hulu service, you get video on demand. And people who are picking up are very much, even though they're younger, right? They obviously skew younger. They're very tech savvy, but they're watching a lot of the same shows that you would expect the broader audience to watch.
So let's talk about Fox News a little bit more. Is Fox News fair and balanced?
I think you've got to look at Fox News. Is the New York Times fair and balanced? And I think you've got to look at the news organization and the opinion organization. And just like the New York Times has a news organization that writes for the front page, they also have an editorial board that writes their opinion pieces. And one of the reasons why the New York Times is such a well-respected newspaper and a very fine newspaper is that their opinion is also very strong. And there's clearly a direction, an opinion that speaks to their readers. And it's the same at Fox News. And so the news organization is a completely different construct and reporting lines to the opinion pieces. And I think that's appropriate for news.
And what does the opinion section represent? Is this a Murdoch family view of the world?
Yeah, no. Look, it's absolutely there was a gap on the center right of the market, and a lot of the media serves the left or center left, you want to call it, very well. There's a lot of competition there. Fox News has found a market to the right, and certainly in the opinion pieces, and that's certainly the strategy. Although I've got to say, when Fox News was started, there's a common misconception, which is that if you look at how we've launched media businesses over, my father has over 60 years, and you have to remember back to CNN, 30 years ago, how staid it was and how static it was. The opening for Fox News was actually the energy, the pace, the graphics, the production values of the channel, which now everyone has copied, so it doesn't look as unique. But back when it launched, it was quite revolutionary.
And when you hear people refer to Fox News as, quote, state TV, how does that make you feel? Like, yeah, we're behind the right guy.
Well, because I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. And I don't think any media organization should be behind an individual, right? You can be behind ideals or concepts. You can be behind whether you think your viewers want lower taxes or higher employment. And there are certain things that you can principles that either your readers or that are important to your readers or your viewers that are important and should be important to the organization. Again, particularly on the opinion side. But you should never get behind an individual, because individuals can be fallible, right? So, and that's an important thing. And I think if you look at Fox News across the whole day part, and Fox News is now the only channel, so I think 20 or 22 hours, I think it's 20 hours live in the 24-hour cycle. And you look at Shepard Smith, I think you can't say that Shepard Smith is behind the president.
No, definitely clear delineation there between the news and the op-ed. James, your brother, spoke last year, I think, about wanting a diversity of voices on the networks. Would you ever hire a left-wing op-ed voice?
I don't think they would do well necessarily Rachel Maddow. It would be bad for her and probably bad for us if we hired her. And we could offer her all the money in the world, but I think she would lose her audience, which is a very strong audience. She worked very hard to get at MSNBC, and good luck to her. She'd have a smaller audience on Fox News, just because of the nature of our audience and what they're interested in. So you've got to be careful with changing the format too much.
And would you ever, if CNN were to become available in the negotiations with the Justice Department about the AT&T Time Warner thing, would you ever consider buying CNN?
No, we couldn't. We wouldn't be allowed to, and we shouldn't be allowed to. So absolutely not.
Okay. A former editor in the company said about your father, ink runs in his veins. He is a news guy. Your dad's famous for walking into the newsroom and cozying up to a journalist and saying, "You're not going to believe what I heard. You got to do." But Lachlan and James, they're entertainment driven. Is that fair?
I don't know. I think both James and I, we've grown up in newsrooms, right? We understand journalism, and we understand the importance of it. And by the way, it's something that's, very sincerely and deeply under threat at the moment from a business model. How people are, can afford, great investigative journalism. And frankly, on some of this stuff, we could go back to the sexual harassment cases. It's fantastic to see some of these newspapers, the Roy Moore cases, a case in point, where the Washington Post has done a huge amount of investigative journalism that they can stand up to, to raise allegations against people. And so when news organizations can remain or can retain the resources to do really excellent and really important in our democracy investigative journalism, that's something we have to fight for. And I know the next couple of days, as you interview some of the internet and social media giants, is something they should really be thinking about, because if we lose that ability for investigative journalism in this country and around the world, it's a terrible thing for all of us as individuals as well. And we've already lost it on the local level. I'm told if you go to Albany in New York, there's not a lot of journalists covering Albany, or certainly not anywhere near the amount there used to be sort of 10 years ago. So it's a significant issue. And so whether James and I think we have a very strong journalism base and understand news organizations, but we're also running businesses that are hugely invested in entertainment as well.
And we're really at the beginning of your regime. If you follow in your father's footsteps, you have another 45 years at least ahead of you. What more change can we see in the new regime? Like, where do you and James agree about where you're headed?
Look, we're going to continue to expand globally. I think we're one of the only companies that we don't see the business as a domestic business and an international business. That's the biggest mistake anyone can make. We're on planes all the time. We see our business in India not only as important as our U.S. business, but frankly more important in many ways. Star TV in India, and people don't realize this, is an incredible rounded media business on its own. It's not a satellite television provider. It's a media company that produces 17,000 hours of local content in 7 languages, not including English. There's a little bit of English that they also produce, so 8 languages including English. That's just entertainment content, 17,000 hours. We own global rights to that content. We'll make $500 million this year in EBITDA out of Star TV, growing to $1 billion in EBITDA by calendar 2020. So it's huge growth businesses for us around the world. Sky is another case in point. And by the way, these are all businesses that we started, right? And so when we see ourselves as, whether it's entertainment or in journalism, we very much see ourselves as underdogs who like to come into a market, offer choice, whether it's, again, in journalism or entertainment, and sort of break up the status quo. And that's where we're being most successful.
If you were to suddenly come into a huge pool of money from the divestiture of some assets, or even just to borrow capital, what would you invest in? I mean, you're famous for having built so many of the Fox networks from scratch.
Look, all media companies, right, are going to be direct to consumer, right? So whether it's in the next few months, and we'll see more launches in the next few months and over the next couple of years, every single media company will have direct-to-consumer products, and ultimately everything will be available direct-to-consumer. So if I see what's the big change that's happening, is that the media business model is from a content point of view, right? From a content point of view, the media business model is based on 1950s technology, and you might say it was slightly altered in the 70s with the growth of cable and pay television, but it's really 1950s technology where we sell our rights historically exclusively to windows across different technological platforms, and that's terrible it's outdated, and it's terrible for the consumer. So what you'll see is media content being sold non-exclusively across multiple platforms, but in a way the consumer can access our product, whether it's a new movie or new TV shows, when and where they want it, and for an affordable price, and not with these crazy blackout periods and crazy exclusivities of the consumer that just doesn't make sense to the consumer anymore.
And speaking of film and television, just as BuzzFeed, many other companies, building these incredible studio capabilities, wanting to get into television, make long form and so forth, I hear that you may be considering selling the Fox television film studios. Why would you do that? We're long-term believers in the TV studio, and particularly the profits in the television studio are growing, and I think will continue to grow. Netflix has for a long time been trying to buy up a lot of content from all the Hollywood TV studios. If you actually look at it, for all the kind of the talk around Netflix's $8 billion worth of production, their self-produced content on Netflix is like less than a fifth of the viewing, right? The other 4/5 comes from the big studios, right? And that's been very profitable for us to sell them. But it's also not the best model for the consumer at the end of the day. So we'll still sell to Netflix, but we want to be non-exclusively on all the other platforms as well. Combine that because you talk about the TV studio and the film studio. So a film, that model has to change as well. The film studio, the film distribution, theatrical distribution model is also outdated. And we had, I think James might have touched on this slightly last year, but if we make a movie like Kingsman 2, right, The Golden Circle, we'll spend about $150 million on the production of that movie, and then we'll spend another $100 million in the launch domestically and global for marketing that movie. So you have a $250 million creative bet, right, that you push out, and then, as I said, historically goes to these different windows that you monetize. What's crazy at the moment, it goes into theaters for about 45 days, and then the theaters, by contract, have a 45-day blackout, where you're not allowed to show that to anyone before you go on to cable or video on demand and that sort of thing. And that has to collapse, right? There's no reason why, particularly the weight of the marketing, why consumers should suddenly not be allowed, and that's not be allowed to get the content. The only place they get it is actually from the piracy sites. So movie theatrical windows will also will collapse, and will collapse quickly. Lachlan, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much. Great to have you.
Thank you, Henry.
Thanks, everybody.